In the late 1920s and early 1930s, communism was kind of hitting a little bit of a speed bump. A lot of the Western world had the roaring 20s, we know that, and there was a lot of wealth being created. There were a lot of communist failed movements, and someone by the name of Antonio Gramsci, who spent time in an Italian prison, he coined this term called cultural Marxism. He argued that Marxists should not just talk about economics, which again, all Marx really cared about was the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat. It was the working class versus the business owners. Antonio Gramsci argued that there should be a cultural struggle to all of this stuff. It took many decades for this to really take root. It finally kind of played out in postmodernist thinking, and eventually the Frankfurt School of Critical Race Theory of Herbert Marcuse. What's the significance of this? Is that what started as just an economic struggle is now a struggle of power dynamics, right? So it's not just that it's the rich versus the poor. Instead, they say it's the white people versus black people, overly generalizing that every single white person in the country is in a position of power and every black person is not. Or men versus women, right? All men must be in power because they believe that we live in a patriarchy, and that all women must not be in power. So that's kind of how they transitioned it into just the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat to a much broader idea of the oppressor versus the oppressed. These ideas have been tried many different times, and we have to understand this, that communism and socialism is tempting. It's very tempting. I'm the first one to admit it. It is much harder to oppose these ideas and articulate a framework that relies upon responsibility, virtue, hard work, waking up early, going to bed late, and taking ownership for your life than one where you can take other people's stuff, redistribute it at your liking, and have to work less. It is much easier. My job would be so much easier if I came here today and said, you get healthcare, you get education, you get a car, you get a home, just take it from the guy down the street. Congratulations, right? That's a lot easier to do. So because of this, because this ideology is it's very persuasive, right? Especially amongst people that are struggling. It has been experimented we have so many different little test modules, if you will, and they're all horrific, right? It's been tried 100 times over the last 100 years, only resulting in the intentional slaughter of 100 million people, right? And you name a continent, any continent, from Rhodesia that turned into Zimbabwe, to Southeast Asia, Cambodia, Vietnam, to the Korean Peninsula, where people still live in absolute darkness, in North Korea, because of these horrific ideas.